keep me going. And I had to force that down.
Did you?
I don't get hungry during when I'm working.
Yeah.
Very rarely. Hello, Elizabeth. It's next Tuesday already.
Hang on, no, what has the
I'll see you.
like to go? Yes.
I think so.
So I now declare the meeting open, and I welcome anyone who's viewing online. Everyone is present, other we do have an apology from Councillor Wilkins as he is sick. Are there any leave of absences? No one's going away, no. Would someone... No, we don't have to do that. Confirmation of minutes. The minutes have been circulated to everyone. Would someone...
Councillor Joshi.
Thank you, Councillor Joshi. Remember my peripheral vision. Councillor Joshi, may I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Ashby. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest?
Your Worship, perhaps if you don't mind, could I just ask Councillor Coleman, agenda item 14.1.1 and Councillor Williams, agenda item 14.1.1, which is in relation to the potential renaming of Vale Park. As a resident of Vale Park and as an investment owner of Vale Park, you still have investment property in Vale Park. Are you comfortable with declaring a perceived interest only insofar as that you have a direct connection to Vale Park?
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, just for the records.
I don't really know whether we specifically need to, because it affects a large enough body of people that anything affected by one would be affected by another. But it certainly doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me to declare it,
Yeah.
but I don't personally think it's necessary.
Okay, we note the Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, it never even crossed my mind. Normally
Thank you.
look at all those things.
And the only reason, Your Worship, the only reason I've raised it this particular time is because at the last council meeting, Councillor Wilkins raised it as a perceived interest because he's a resident of Vale Park. And I just felt that for the purposes of consistency and just in case any member of the community might be looking at tonight's meeting and is comparing it to past meetings. That was the only reason, councillors. But at the end of the day, it is your decision and your decisions alone.
I'm happy to do it, but I thought Councillor Wilkins' perceived interest was more specifically around because he lived in that actual tribal area that he was looking at, which is wide and everything. So I'm happy to.
Thank you, Councillor.
It's not going to affect any behaviour. So.
Yeah. And Your Worship, I also would like to declare an interest. Mine is a section 120 under the Local Government Act interest, specifically in relation to item 19.4, which is the CEO Pulse Survey. And Your Worship, I will be leaving the meeting along with all the members of the leadership team, but for the Council Secretariat, who will remain to take the minutes for the meeting.
Thank you very much. There are no deputations, representations or presentations. We move on to 5, the Mayor's Diary, which everyone has received. In case you hadn't noticed, there was an update, and that was a breakfast was missed on the 7th of May, and that's the standard monthly breakfast with the era mayors. Does anyone have any questions on the Mayor's Diary? If not, would someone move that they be received and noted? Councillor Bishop, a seconder please. Councillor Joshi, all those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Are there any reports from elected members having attended training, conferences or seminars? No. Are there any reports from elected members having attended subsidiary board meetings?
I have. Yes, I didn't submit a written report because there's really nothing other than confidential business that's not covered in the minutes. It was mostly reports.
That was East-West.
Of East-West, sorry. Your Worship, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ashby. Questions from the gallery?
Your Worship, we do have a question from the gallery. It was actually received via email on Friday the 13th of May, just gone, from Mr. Brad Tyndall. Because we received it before the agenda was being built, We've obviously added the question as part of the agenda, and we were also able to provide an administration response, which has already been put into the agenda, but for the purposes of the formalities of the meeting, Your Worship, I will proceed to read it. Mr. Tidwell also did provide a preamble to his question, so I will read the preamble, followed by the question, followed by administration's response. So, the preamble to the question. Recent development plan consent lodgement to the Walkerville Council for the tree removal of council-owned land due to property redevelopment. Council's subsequent approval of the removal of the tree. However, costs provided by the council demonstrate an increase of over 400% when compared to other works completed in the past 2 years. Council have advised the increase in costs is due to changes in their methodology to determine the fees associated with the removal of a street tree. The following extract from public records illustrates the increase in costing provided by Walkerville Council for tree removals. 14 Stewart Avenue, Val Park, SA. Removal of street tree acceptable subject to a removal and replacement fee of $3,675. 2 Wallace Street, Val Park, SA, $3,150 plus GST, tree removal replacement and establishment of a new street tree. Development register for period 2019, the following properties. 11A Lansdowne Terrace, Val Park, offset street tree removal, $935, yes. 35A Devonshire Street, Walkerville, offset street tree removal, $650. 51A Ascot Avenue, Val Park, offset street removal, $450. 32D Brunswick Street, Walkerville, offset street tree removal, $650. 35 Devonshire Street, Walkerville, offset street tree removal, $440. And then Mr. Tidwell also provides a development register for period 2017 with a link attached to that. Due to the exorbitant cost provided by Walkerville Council for my own circumstances, I had organised a quotation from a local tree removalist specialist for the removal of the street tree. Their cost being $66 inclusive of GST for the removal of such tree. Walkerville Council's fee as part of their tree valuation and replacement cost analysis methodology table, $3,675 plus GST. These increased in costs are certainly not in line with community expectations, market value or other local council pricing in the council. And the question is, how can the Walkerville Council justify this increase in costs to residents in their local council? Administration response. The town of Walkerville recently undertook a review of the value and costs associated with the removal and re-establishment of trees within the township. There are 2 main components that make up the value that apply to these trees. The value of the tree itself and the cost to re-establish the new tree over the first 3 years post-planting. The value of trees is based upon the City of Melbourne's tree valuation method. This method looks at a number of components, including a basic value of the tree, the particular species, the current aesthetics, its location and current condition. Each of these components is given a score and then used in a formula to calculate the final value of the actual tree. The formula is made up of V for value, which will equal the basic value, the dollar value, multiplied by the species, multiplied by the aesthetics, multiplied by the locality, multiplied by the condition. The costs associated with the re-establishment of the tree have a number of components as specified, which include the inspection of the tree and stump removal, new tree costs, locating of underground services, labour associated with the planting, materials including water wells, stakes and the like. The cost also includes the maintenance costs over the first 3 years after planting. For example, watering, pruning, fertilising and soil conditioning. These costs do not include any additional costs that may be incurred due to vandalism, pest and disease control, tree protection from development and additional pruning or watering. That's the answer, the question and the answer, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. There are no further questions. Questions without notice.
Matt Frickett, can we ask any questions regarding that question? Or would you rather ask questions without notice?
I'm happy to take a question, Your Worship.
Yes.
Just from reading through this, I'm just wondering, and I know this is something that council will have adopted, and probably each individual council adopts that. I understand that completely. But there were two things. One is, it appears as though between 2019 and 2021 there's a change in terminology. So it's now called removal of, correct me if I'm wrong please, tree removal replacement or removal of a street tree. And previously in 2019 it was called off-street tree removal. Is that simply just a different name for the same thing?
Through Your Worship, predominantly correct, Councillor. And also the variation between those 2 years is the methodology. So as part of the urban forest strategy, Council was very interested in ensuring that the value of the tree was greater than just removing a tree and replacing a tree. So that's essentially why the costs have changed and varied accordingly.
Yeah. And just one other question. Now, once again, I know it's a council decision, so obviously nothing on the administration. And this didn't occur to me when we were going through it at the time. I can't remember exactly when we did it, to be honest. But why do we use the City of Melbourne's methodology?
Through Your Worship, the City of Melbourne is being used because they are essentially the leaders in this field when it comes to understanding the valuation of trees. So they spend a considerable amount of time and effort and money to do an analysis and research. I think the University of... One of the universities, I don't remember if it's the University of Melbourne or Melbourne Business College, one of those was used to actually do the analysis work. And so that set the benchmark for how trees should be valued. And Walkerville Council made the determination to align its costings to the methodology used by the City of Melbourne.
Okay, and just one other thing. Do we know how these costs compare against, say, Campbelltown or Port Adelaide Enfield?
That, Your Worship, I'm not in a position to answer tonight. I might just refer or defer the question to the Group Manager as it's an infrastructure to get a sense if he is familiar. Otherwise, we might have to take that one on notice,
yeah, sure.
Councillor.
So not specifically, but having spoken to some of the other resident councils there, looking to adopt our methodology, they feel that provides a much more reflective cost of trees and the value they provide to the greater community. So I couldn't tell you what the costs associated, but I know that they are looking at our methodology as kind of a leading methodology in that space.
Or our procedures,
Procedures,
really.
sorry.
Because that it's not our, we've pinched the methodology from the City of Melbourne. Yeah.
Fair leaders, City of Melbourne. Yes, very much so.
The whole article is really worth, if you can download the document. The document is amazing, absolutely amazing. Josh put me onto it, and
in fact, that's what it was used for the basis for the urban forest strategy.
It's an amazing document.
Yeah, thanks.
Happy? Yep, good. Thank you. Thank you very much. So are there any questions without notice? No? There are no questions on notice. There are no petitions. Are there any motions without notice? No? There are no motions with notice. We move on to 14, reports requiring decision of council. We move to 14.1, strategy. 14.1.1, preliminary suburban boundary realignment and renaming proposal, additional information. You've all read the report. Are there any questions regarding the report? Councillor Menke.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. I suppose just to start with, I was wondering why there wasn't a fifth point, that there was just a triangular section between Lansdowne, North East Road and Ascot Avenue and River Torrens that would be annexed as North Walkerville and leaving Vale Park north
Yes.
of Ascot Avenue as is. Why don't we just look at that section?
Through your worship, that's one of the proposals. So the actual recommendation, the original recommendation, was driven by Councillor Bishop, who asked us to look at that triangular section that you've rightly pointed out. When administration was looking at this report and the resolution of council, in terms of going out to consult with the community, we thought it would be useful and prudent to ask a broader question. So in case the community will say, well, what about us, or what are the other options? So this report is really putting forward 4 questions really that we would like to go and ask the community. The original motion from Councillor Bishop, the do nothing option, as well as the taking the whole of Vale Park, what constitutes the whole of Vale Park now, and renaming that to North Walkerville, and then the triangle, or just focusing on the triangle. So that's the thinking behind it, Councillor.
Okay, yeah. Just obviously conscious of, I think the stated in the report about the junior primary school, Vale Park,
Yes.
having to rename itself and everything as well. If the whole suburb was to be
Yes.
changed, then obviously there would be an impact on the school. And I'm
Councillor,
also...
can I just stop you on
Sure.
that point, because that's a very, very valid point that you make, and it is written into the report, Scott's report. Your worship, the manager of the area has had conversations with the Department of Education, and he's also had conversations with the Surveyor General. So just in terms of where those conversations are, Your Worship, perhaps if I could just ask Scott to come in at that point in terms of the renaming and everything else.
Through Your Worship, so with regard to the school zoning, the Department for Education will put forward a formal proposal or formal comments with regard to that specifically. Given that Vale Park is currently broken up into 3 different zones for high schools anyway, they're of the opinion that at this particular time it wouldn't impact that too much unless there was unless the entire suburb was changed, which would impact the primary school itself. With regards to the conversations with the Surveyor General, we had a meeting with him excuse me, late last Thursday. They've reviewed the proposals put forward. They're quite happy with the proposals as far as them going out to the community. Their recommendation was that the community should be consulted first, whether this is something that should proceed or not. Then they can pass comment on the relevant renamings or realignments before we go forward with the process. At which point the Department for Education will have submitted their formal submission for it.
And Scott, did you get a sense from the department, or did the department raise any objections if they had to change the name of the school?
Through Your Worship, no objections were flagged at this present time, because obviously it's not a formal proposal that's been put forward.
No, that's fair enough. But I was just conscious. I thought it was well. I mean, it was good to put that in the bulletin board. What else was I going to say now? Just on that point as well. This is pretty minor, Mel. The costs associated, you talk about, so it'd be similar to the cost of an election process. But I was thinking about any legal agreements over land for residents, having changed bank mortgages, might be one thing to consider. The other thing as well would be, does the Lands Titles Office, did they give any feedback as to whether, I suppose it depends, if we do end up doing the whole of Vale Park, would there be a fee for every property they need to change the certificate of title from Vale Park to North Walkerville or whatever it might be?
Through Your Worship, that was not raised into the discussion with the Surveyor General at all. With regards to the cost, I basically indicated the amount that we'd put in our report, and he said that would effectively be on par, if not less than that amount, for the realignment or rechanging process.
Okay.
as I understand it from what the Surveyor General was saying, the changing of all that information, the personal information for electricity, banking details, would fall onto the residents within the areas. Whether there's a cost associated with that, I'm uncertain at this present time.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure there's a cost for that. I was just wondering about
Council-
the legal documentation of mortgages and whatever.
Councillor Williams, you had a question?
Oh, sorry, I had another question.
Well, let's Councillor Williams ask and then we'll go back to
Oh, okay, sure.
Councillor Williams.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. My question really is around the report mentioned about the costs perhaps being similar to that of conducting an election. Is it legal for council to conduct this survey at the same time as the election takes place in November next year? Because it's a good way to perhaps save $30,000. And given that this issue is something that council's probably toyed with for 20 or 30 years at various times, I just thought that it was an opportunity to save, obviously, the costs involved. And who knows, if people are responding to that, we might even get a higher response rate, although we've been getting a good one anyway, and we're getting a higher response rate to our elections. So.
Your Worship, if I understand the question correctly, there is nothing that prevents Council from consulting with its community for a potential name change at or about the time of an election, as long as it's before September. We can't enter into September next year. We can't do anything in caretaker that hasn't already been approved. Right, so Council resolves to consult with the community. It can absolutely positively proceed and do that. The costs associated is not the actual cost of consulting. The costs that have been earmarked in this report is if the name change is to proceed, it's the cost associated with the name changing.
Okay.
So it's not the cost of consulting. Yeah.
So the consulting would essentially be the postage cost.
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
and printing.
Correct.
Councillor
Sorry, yeah, thank you. The other thing I was also contemplating as well was the historic data that we have as a council through our social data, and because we're really good every year, we're going out capturing community data. So it'd be good to have that comparison. Once we change the boundaries, we're going to lose, depending on, it could be, if it's all a Vale Park or it's just a triangle, anything above Lansdowne will become confused, I suppose. Especially if we then merge Walkerville into that section as well, that becomes an issue of the data integrity. But then also I don't know about our data structures here with how you capture all your asset information, but every pit, every road segment, every footpath segment, every stormwater pipe, probably your street trees, I don't know, whatever all your layers are. I don't know how many, the quantity of individual points or assets would all have to have that changed. So if we start playing with data, you could, things can be missed and then things can get a bit messy. So I think it can be a bit of a burden on staff as well. But anyway, I'll just put that out there.
Yeah. Valid points.
Councillor Ashby.
I don't really have any questions, only an opinion, I guess, at this stage. Is it too early for that or not?
Why do we move someone moves the motion, then you may speak for or against it, however you wish.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? If not, would someone move the motion so we can debate? Thank you. Councillor Bishop, may I have a seconder, please? Councillor Furlan. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Bishop?
Yes, I put it up originally, and the reason being is that the people that I know that live in the Triangle would love to be part of Walkerville, because no one realises that triangle actually exists. They all think Vale Park is on the eastern side of Ascot Avenue, and the people that I know in the Triangle, I haven't had anybody say that they don't want the name change. They would really like it.
Thank you. Would you wish to speak, Councillor Furlan?
Well, just an overall comment. I think it's not a bad thing to put it out to the community and make a choice. I think there'd probably be feedback that we haven't even thought about.
Correct.
And, you know, I think win, lose or draw, I don't think there's any harm in it. I think it may tidy up that section. People might be passionate to leave it as it is. I think, you know, that's my view. I think it's
Having just changed.
Sorry.
Just a clarification, the motion that's been put is the 1, 2, 3. Is that?
Correct. Yes.
Yes, not the.
It's
So
1,
and then the oars are separate.
2, 3. No, that's all the same motion. It's 1, 2, 3.
So
And
we'll
then
be,
A or B or C or D.
so we'll be asking the community which of those four
Okay,
options
right,
would it
yeah,
be interested
All
in.
right, well, okay, well, I'm against the resolution. I probably did think at one stage maybe we ought to make a change, but when you actually go through and read the report and the consideration of the work and the cost and the inconvenience that's going to be involved in it, I think we ought to stick with D there, that no change to current suburban boundaries and place names be entertained. I think there's a good old saying, it said it ain't broke, don't fix it, so I'm against any further action.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Does anyone wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Williams?
I'm going to speak neither for nor against. Do you want me to do that now, or you want someone before first, Ed?
I would prefer, but
Yeah, sure.
no one else wishes to speak, well then you may speak.
I'm not allowed to speak.
No,
again,
not
am I?
again. You
I
can
think-
at the end.
I think Norm had his hand up, so I don't know whether that
Did
was
you?
for
No,
or
you're
against.
scratching my head, but seeing you raise the subject,
You going to speak for
Being a
the
resident.
motion?
may I?
You may.
Being a resident of Vale Park and talking to some of the residents around there, they think it's a good idea. They're not talking about just the triangle, I'm talking about the whole of Vale Park. This was tried some, 10, 15 years ago?
Would have been, through your worship, would have been more than 12
Yeah.
years ago, councillor.
Something like that. They're all died, I think.
Yeah.
And we've got a whole new generation of younger people moved into the area, and I think you're going to be surprised at the answers you're going to get back.
I won't be surprised, I know.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. Now, once again, neither for nor against. And likewise, I've spoken to some people in that triangle area who, the ones I've spoken to are quite, as Councillor Bishop said, are quite in favour of it. I've also spoken to some people on the eastern side of Ascot Avenue who live in Vale Park, who have said they would like Vale Park to remain Vale Park. So I think, as I said, everyone is going to have their own view on the recommendation that's here, and I think the whole community will have its own view on the recommendation that's there. And so I think it probably is worth asking everyone. We might get as good a I would be expecting as good a response as we received from the Wesleyan Cemetery, because it affects directly the people that live in all of those areas. So as I said, I have my own ideas, but I don't have any
Thank you, Councillor
problem
Williams.
going out.
Do you wish to speak before I
Oh,
put the
your
motion?
worship. Sorry, your worship, councillor Johnson.
Sorry, Councillor Joshi, I didn't see you there.
Yeah,
My
sorry.
apologies.
I was just saying that I'm in favour of it because as we're just putting it out there for consultancy out there, what people think. And I think that's what truly would be a fair evaluation as to how to go about the process. So I'm in favour of it.
Thank you. You may wish to wind up.
Yes, I think the driving factor for the people that live in the triangle, they are in actual fact part of Walkerville, but their properties, because they're Vale Park, don't get the Walkerville values. And I think that perhaps is one of the driving factors on it. And I've got my colleague next to me nodding his head. So, and having just changed offices, my husband worked out of the same office for 48 years, and we've changed offices, and it's not difficult to change. There's no charge to change any of your addresses. You just ring the utilities and they do it. So it's not difficult.
Thank you. Well, we'll put it to the vote.
Sorry, can I just be clear that when I read the recommendation, so I think I've got confused because I was reading the options below. Is the triangle to be called, is there an option for it to be called North Walkerville? Or
Yes.
is it just Walkerville?
Yes, North Walkerville.
Okay, because we got the
Oh, sorry, Your Worship. The triangle to be called Walkerville. Then the other option is that the whole of Vale Park be called North Walkerville.
well, that's
And the triangle component to be renamed North Walkerville. So the triangle to be called Walkerville, the triangle to be called North Walkerville, the whole of Vale Park to be called North Walkerville, or nothing at all.
So when I read B, sorry, the triangle section of the suburb of Vale Park is bound by Lansdowne, North East, Ascot and River Torrens be said from Vale Park and annexed into the suburb of Walkerville.
Oh, sorry, you're right. So Walkerville and then North Walkerville.
So could we have another point there that triangle section could also be North Walkerville?
Your Worship, I believe this was discussed at the previous meeting, and the consensus was that 5 suburbs was too much, I believe, from my recollection.
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship, I agree with that comment because we had discussed it in a council our size to add another suburb in, that would be that small seem. I mean, I hear what you're saying because if you're going to present...
Would you like to move an amendment before I put the motion?
If I could.
You may.
To do just that, whether it's somewhere between A and D, to pretty much the wording of B, but to have annexed into the suburb of North Walkerville. Oh no, sorry, and then the remainder to be called Vale Park, to be left as Vale Park.
Are you happy for us to move this, amend this motion as it is, since it's the same as very similar to the original motion? It's just adding.
No, I don't think.
Oh, you want an amendment? Okay.
No,
That's fine. I just
too
wanted to ask you. That's
small
right.
for 5 suburbs.
That's right. That's fine. So can we go back to the amendment? Oh, I see what you're doing. Is this what you, the amendment you want?
Oh, well, there is...
No, we
Oh,
got
sorry.
with the amendment. So it's the motion with the addition plus an E, make it E.
Annexed into, or annexed as Vale Park and annexed as the suburb of North Walkerville.
No, into this, just put add the north in front of Walkerville.
Yeah, more
Is that
so
right?
into the suburb of, well, there is no current suburb, so it would be annexed as North Walkerville or as, and then
River Torrens be
the
renamed.
remainder of Vale Park
Suburb
be,
of Vale Park.
be
Remain as is.
remain as is.
And that needs to be renamed.
So that one that will retain the
suburb of-
Vale Park, and that will-
The suburb of Vale Park and renamed. Get rid of annexed. Renamed to North Walkerville.
And the remaining,
And the remaining section of the suburb of Vale Park as bounded by the park to be same Vale Park,
Yeah.
correct?
To be
Yeah.
retained.
To
be
retain as
retained
Vale
as
Park.
yeah,
As Vale Park. Councillor, is that
yes,
correct?
that's correct.
May we have a seconder for this motion?
I'm against it all, but I'll second it for the board of debate.
Thank you. Councillor Ashby? I think we've talked about it enough. Is everyone happy if we just put the amendment now? All those in favour of the amendment, so we have an E, section E on top of the, as an addition to the original motion? Against? Carried, lost, sorry.
Sorry about the extra one.
So we go back to the original motion. Been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Scott. We move on to 14.1.2, the Walkerville Oval Redevelopment Committee, amendment to terms of reference and appointment of a specialist external member. Does anyone have any questions on the recommendation or the accompanying papers?
I'd be happy to move the recommendation, but just a question as well. I'm still happy to move it. And thought there was a good suggestion of Councillor Ashby's regarding Mr. Paul Diulio to form part of the committee. Just a simple question, I think I know the answer to it anyway. In the terms of reference that we allude to in part 2 here, I had another read through the terms of reference, and the parts mentioned in the other parts of the terms of reference, like the committee preparing a project implementation plan and things like that, no doubt are still yet to come. They're things that we'll probably start to do from, I guess, probably from the next meeting, and other points, obviously the prudential review finalisation is some way down the track as well. So, yeah.
Your Worship, just on that one, the prudential review doesn't kick off until after the design is completed.
Yeah.
So we know exactly what it is that we're working with. So BRM Advisory, Michael Richardson has been briefed, he's well aware. So he also knows that he's to start that process the minute that he gets the green light from the Executive Officer of the committee.
Yeah.
No, we have, thank you, Councillor Williams. We have it. Would someone second that, please?
I'd second
Councillor Ashby?
that. Just in doing so, I just would like to acknowledge Councillor Nenke's input into the suggestion of, it wasn't entirely my own idea.
It was a very good idea.
We had a discussion on this and I would acknowledge the support.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the motion? If not, are you happy if I put the motion? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Suggestion on both of the parts.
A question outside of this, just with regards to the general process of where we're going forward here with the, so we've got the strategic committee looking at the design and whatever.
Yep.
How far does the remainder of the board, elect members, get to look at the design prior to going out to public community engagement? Or how fast does that progress?
The recommendation from the committee will have to, I will imagine, come to council for final approval before we go out to public consultation.
So, Your Worship, the terms of reference indicate that where the design changes away from what the community see from the concept, so if there is change to the design and it's sort of significant change, then it must come back for council's approval. So council will see the design. If it's just tweaked from the concept, you're probably not going to see it again. But from what I understand from the committee and talking to the architects, it's likely that the design will change. So that will be required to come back into the chamber before it goes back out for consultation. That's why councillors, in a later report, the draft budget report, the report talks about a design phase in the order of about 9 months, and that's why we're allowing that period of time.
And my other question as well, whilst I'm still at design, is whilst I was with Paul Delilio,
yes,
I was at Campbelltown. That's
yeah.
what gave me the idea, because I was talking to him about it. We were talking about not just the building, we were talking about the other services around the lighting, etc. was all included within, and that's it just brought me right back to the objectives of what we're trying to achieve. And to me, that the function of the oval is, like the most important aspect of all of this, because that's what we're actually trying to provide the service to. And look, I do my little under 8s coaching, and know what a little fella got hit in the face with a footy tonight. So blood nose, but it does just make me draw back on the fact that maybe, look, it is 2021, we probably need a lot better lighting out there. I know the junior coaching, we've had meetings about where the development's going, and look, they will bit whatever, you know, about it, but the talk around that night was about having the services around the public lighting. We talked about, you know, even with the cricket, one of the big items was that, you know, we talked about shifting the cricket nets and getting more nets there.
Can I interrupt you? We have discussed it at the committee level to do a master plan of the whole site. It's not just the centre. It's not just the community hub. It is the whole. We have, and I'm sure the other committee members will back me up here, we have discussed to do a master plan of the whole site, which includes lighting, includes the nets, it includes all of that, it includes trees, and it includes everything that, so that the facility, it is a facility. We're looking at the development of a facility, which is the whole thing. It's not just the building.
And just if I can just finish it, 10 seconds. The reason they talk about the nets is to keep more kids at cricket at the Oval, because it will bring kids in or families into the club to get more money over the bar. So you can just see how it's a trickle-on effect. So, okay.
Perfect.
Right, we move on to 14.2 policy, 14.2.1 review of rating policy. This has been circulated to all members. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? It has been reviewed by the audit committee. Now, if people don't have any questions, would someone be happy to move it? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Furlan. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We move on to 14.3, the public, 14.3, which is operational. 14.3.1, the public notification and hard lodgement fees under the PDI Act. It's been circulated. Does anyone have any questions regarding this? Yes, Councillor Bishop.
I couldn't see when it will be reviewed. So we go in at $205, absolutely. When does that costing get reviewed and how does it? Annually?
Yearly, yes.
And so we just don't ticket. We look at the cost of how much that signage is costing us in 12 months' time.
And Your Worship, perhaps I should just say, under normal circumstances, you would have seen this as part of your fees and charges schedule. Council's not going to see the fees and charges schedule until the June meeting, so next meeting. But this one and the immediate item thereafter, we wanted the fees to come into effect as of the 1st of July. We wanted it to come in immediately. This one comes in the minute that you decide today. So it will come in literally overnight. So by tomorrow it will be enacted and we'll get it out and about. The dog and cat item immediately below, after this one will be from the 1st of July because we need it embedded as part of the dog and cat registrations. So this now will become a yearly process.
Right.
And so next year, the 22-23 year, we will embed this in the fees and charges and you will review them annually.
So you'll go out to check that 205
we'll have
sufficient.
We'll have evidence to be able to refer to.
Thank you.
And did you say you're happy to move it?
I'm happy to move it, unless there are some other questions.
I had another question. Thank you, Mayor Fricker. It was just regarding, similarly to my comment regarding the street trees earlier, do we know what other councils in the area charge? Do we have an idea where we sit with other councils?
Your Worship, I'll have to defer that one to the group manager of the area. Hopefully she's maybe able to assist us. If not, we'll have to take that one on notice.
Through Your Worship, we know that, so first of all, the amount of 155 is based on a fee that was received late last year from a supplier who provides the same service to other councils such as Mitcham and Hunley. So that is a fee for service across the board. Other councils like Port Adelaide Enfield, we touched on this I think last meeting, they utilise their own resourcing to print off the templates. They print them on a call flue and then they have their ground staff or depot staff who are always out and about to installing them. So I guess the administrative costs associated with that are captured in a fee that's not too dissimilar to ours. I believe theirs is around 230. So, but I can check that.
Yeah, well, the main reason I was asking is just to make sure that we're not over or underselling what other councils in the area are doing. We should try and make sure, like if it was 250 in most places surrounding us, well, I think that's what we should charge. But as the CEO's just mentioned, it's going to come back through the fees and charges.
You might recall, through your worship, you might recall you saw this report originally late last year, probably I think it was September, and in that we only, I guess, accounted for the legislative, or only accounted for the fee quote that we received from the printer. On reflection, we didn't think that was a fair, I guess, reflection of the administrative costs associated with proofing. And we want to make sure that we get it right, and $50 seem to be a rounded amount. But as fees and charges, it will be reviewed yearly.
Okay, thank you.
You happy to second it now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Does anyone have any other further comments on the resolution? If not, I'll put it. All those in favour? Thank you, carried. Animal management 14.3.2, the animal management fees and charges schedule. And this has to take into effect as of the 1st of July. Does anyone have any questions regarding animal management fees? If not, would someone be happy to? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Second to Councillor Joshi. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move to 14.3.3, the budget review. Review 3. This was presented to the Audit Committee at their last meeting. Are there any questions regarding Budget Review 3? Councillor Bishop.
It's not exactly about the budget review, but it brought up a question in my mind. How much are we in outstanding council rates that are over 2 pay cycles?
Through your worship, so administration has gone through the list, so we've gone through who hasn't paid in the last 3 quarters. We've got around 60,000 on our books, which will go to the debtors.
$60,000?
$60,000, yes. Thank you. That'll go to the debtors if BR3 is approved.
Is that the usual amount we have outstanding? It's not exceptional because of COVID or anything like that?
We just have some slow payers.
And also recognising, Your Worship, also recognising that we do have a number of people who are on a payment plan. So they will be on payment plans for a while. Yeah. And we work with people due to our financial hardship, the financial hardship policy position that council has. Yeah.
Are there any other questions about Budget Review 3? If not, is someone happy to move it? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. May I have a seconder? Councillor Furlan. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We move on to 14.3.4. The 2021-2022 draft annual business plan and budget, which we have very closely scrutinised over the last 4 workshops. I've trouble saying that.
Your Worship, if you don't mind, I think it is listed in the report, but just to reinforce for the elected members, the primary difference you're seeing tonight compared to what you saw last week in your 4th budget workshop is the...
It's just hard to say, isn't it?
Is the costs that we think will be expending on the Walkerville Oval redevelopment. We indicated to you last week in the workshop that we set aside about $2 million. We thought there'd be a drawdown of $2 million. On reflection and having done the numbers again, we think that's going to be closer to $1 million. And the reason we've settled at $1 million, it'll be just under $1 million, is because the design phase is going to take about 9 months, but also we're anticipating the first milestone payment from the grant funding. So the first milestone payment is a 30% payment, and we're expecting actually to receive that in the next financial year. That's why we've readjusted the numbers. That's why the debt level is less than what you've seen. That's why the surplus is closer to just over 50,000 compared to, I think in the workshop we were talking about 20-ish, 22,000. So I just wanted to highlight that just to reinforce the difference.
Borrowing less money to
yes, we're borrowing less money.
interest.
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Williams,
Thank you, Mayor. If we could, that was my exact question about the surplus probably going up by the amount of interest that we'll save during that period of year of not committing
Drawing down.
$1 million. So the explanation of getting the dough in from the state government first would explain us changing that rather than, originally I had a note, or do we really want to go back to one rather than two because it's only pushing amounts forward, but now that you explain that, yeah, it makes good sense. I guess the only query then is it makes our surplus about 58,000 or something or another. But really, we've been over and over and over it and made some minor changes that met halfway at the last meeting. I think we were at $1.91, $58,000 surplus. I think it's a pretty good budget to go out with, so I'd be more than happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. If we have no further questions, would someone like to second that? Councillor Bishop, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'm happy with it. We've been through it. Thank
No
you
one
for your
wishes to speak
explanation.
against the motion? No? Are you happy if I put the motion? All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Thank you, everyone.
It's a big exhale.
The group manager
And
comes
another
out
one
finally
down we now move on to 14.3.5, artificial turf removal, policy and procedure. Do we have any questions regarding this report? Yes, Councillor Bishop.
55 artificial verges, 3 have been approved, 52 are illegal there. Do we know over what period this artificial turf was laid illegally?
Through your worship,
Excuse me, it wasn't actually illegal. They didn't know, we didn't have a policy in it.
Well, it is.
Oh,
They
no.
didn't ask. You can't do anything to council verges without
Yeah,
asking.
I understand, but we didn't have
Without
any.
permits.
We didn't have any stance on it. So I think illegal is a bit of a harsh word to use at this time.
They tampered with public.
Well, they didn't have a
When
permit.
no,
They
just
didn't
wait.
have a
Thank
permit. They
Thank
didn't
you.
have a
Just don't like
permit.
it. Illegal sounds like you really broke the law. They didn't have a permit.
Okay, thank you for correcting.
It wasn't a
They didn't
hanging
have a
offence.
permit. Thank you. Do we know over what period of time this artificial turf was laid?
through your worship, it appears, looking at the aerial imagery, since about 2015, 2016 seems to be when it started, and then it's just been progressively installed from
And you
there.
can see the 2015 ones.
Okay.
They're poorly.
So it's
And
about
it's
over the
nice,
last
yeah.
6 years.
Correct.
Does that stuff break down?
It's plastic.
I know, but does it sort of disintegrate and float down the street, or?
Through your worship,
Can
yeah,
we
it would
just-
generally be, as
Goes
it deteriorates, it kind of breaks away and then goes into the gutter or into the verge and either gets washed down if it's raining or will be swept up by the street sweeper. But yeah, as it breaks away, it'll just blow into wherever it lands.
So I can see this causing the biggest furor with those 55. I thought, I've got here, this is going to be a fight of all fights with 55 of our ratepayers. Can we just let that stuff rot away, or that's not possible? We put it into legislation, our own legislation, no more, and then let that stuff just disintegrate? Could our guys go out and punch some fork holes into it to make it disintegrate faster? I'm just thinking, I can see this being a bun fight of all bun fights, but perhaps is not worth fighting.
I'd say the guys would probably say, as long as you come with me, that'll be right.
A rotary hole will do wonders.
Through your worship, it'll take many, many years for it to break down enough that they would probably they'll probably replace themselves at some point. It'll get to a point where it's just deteriorated that it's just looks really, really poor condition. Some will leave it there anyway until basically they move out or become someone else's problem. Others will look to put something else. But unfortunately, it will just, it's like most plastics, it'll kind of,
Horrible.
survive forever and look quite poor.
And Your Worship, recognising the comments that Councillor Bishop makes, hence the procedure, the way the procedure is written, this is slowly, this is not us coming down with the heavy sledgehammer. It's consulting, it's working with the residents, it's trying to reach a resolution that's going to satisfy everybody. But at the end of the day, we do have the authority and the right to remove it.
How much would those verges on average, or how much is that stuff a square metre, for example?
It's quite expensive.
Through Your Worship, depends on how decent a quality they buy. You can look at, $50 a square metre up to $150 a square metre, depending on the really nice ones are quite expensive, and then the cost, obviously, the labour to lay it can be substantial to get it all flat, but it just depends.
This is going to cause so much angst. Are you up to it, Ben?
Councillor Williams. Just Councillor Williams and then Councillor Ashby.
Thank you, Mayor Frick. And the CEO just alluded to it as well, actually, like your approach. So it was gently. And also when we go out to the affected residents, letting them know that we want to work with them, but also explaining to them our reasons behind removing it, and hopefully that will allay the fears of some people. But just one comment that I wanted to make, it was on page 136, about, as I was reading through the policy, I thought toward the bottom of page 136, I think it's the bottom square with the action, and probably the first one with action under 4.2. And I know from reading this that it's up to the value of $40 per square metre, which is a council contribution. But I think it's worth putting that in the policy so it's clear that that is an amount that council will contribute towards it, because in reading that, I can understand people reading that and thinking, well, do I have to pay that, or is that an amount that I might pay, or is that something that council is contributing? So I think in the policy, and I'm not sure if you'd like me to get that in the motion or not, but that's all you'd have to add is a couple of words.
Yeah, so council contribution, I have to say that slowly, up to a value of, Your Worship, I would like that in the resolution. Council, yeah, that makes sense.
It's on page 2 of the artificial turf removal policy procedure.
It's in the table 4.2.
Yeah.
Table 4.2 in the
first and third square.
In the policy procedure.
Mm-hmm. 4.2, yeah.
Approved artificial turf, it's called. So,
do you want us to put includes
Sorry,
contribution?
With the following amendment. Can we just do a semicolon after amendment? And then that, get rid of that to council. So you can have a leap, sorry, no, get rid of that. It says insert.
get rid of
Get
that.
Insert and then do that.
Insert council contribution.
Council contribution
Prior
up
to
to
value.
$40 a square metre. Close your things. As set in table 4.2 of the policy procedure.
Just so that it's clear that it's safe.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So you get a question. I'm happy with that.
You're happy to move? Thank you, Councillor Williams.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Anyone wish to speak against the motion? Do you wish to speak
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things. Yes, I'm very much in favour of it. I think I brought it to the council soon after I got here, and I agree with with Councillor Bishop that
Did
it's
you
probably,
just promote it? Sorry, I couldn't let that go by.
It probably, we might get a bit of blood on our nose as time goes by, but I think softly, and get rid of the worst first.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some immaculate turf up and down Church Terrace, for argument's sake. There's, Arthur Murdoch, for instance, he's not very happy with us, but I think, but yes.
So I agree there. As a walker, I know that I'm dealing with the really dreadful ones up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. If there are no further, no one wishes to speak against, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you very much. We move on to 14.3.6, which is Clooney Avenue 3-hour parking and resident permit parking proposal. Does anyone have any questions of the paper or the proposal? Councillor Furlan.
This is probably preempting a future survey that obviously this street is copying a lot from, I assume, from the Woolies car park around there. Or
It's, through your worship, it's all day commuters and flow on from the Watson.
Yeah.
And Councillor, you're spot on. This item didn't just happen overnight. So we've been getting a lot of feedback, complaints from the residents, and Councillor Joshi particularly late last year has been inundated with requests and inquiries from a particular resident who really was demanding a residential parking permit. And the explanation I had to give was that I can't issue a permit if there's no parking restrictions. So the question was then, well, how do we go about getting restrictions in place? And so we explained the process, which essentially was consulting with the community, which we did. That was a significant period of time. And so the results have now come back. It just seems the timing of it, with the budget conversations around the traffic studies for next year, I don't think we should wait. I think this is one of those things that we probably need to act on. And in so doing, we want to also review how we manage the public car park that runs off of the Watson that we own. So I think there's an opportunity for us as part of the traffic surveys that we will be doing next financial year when the budget is approved, to explore how that small public car park can potentially be, and I might just get, if you worship, if you don't mind, the group manager to talk to that, because it was his idea and I thought it was brilliant.
Through your worship, so currently there's the third car park, the one without the boom gates at the Watson, which is our car park. A lot of that is just filled with either Watson overspill or all-day commuters. I think there's an opportunity there to provide some short-term parking, whether it be 3 hours or something of the like, to enable the residents to make use of it, visitors and things like that. Also, people visiting the Watson, the coffee shop at the bottom there, while kind of making it difficult for those all-day commuters that are taking up, parking, which is very limited in the township, to provide the residents in our community a place to park, rather than just people that are jumping onto the river torrents and navigating to the city from there.
it's very good.
Assuming we charge after 3 hours?
They'll be infringed.
So,
We remove the car and repark.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. The only problem I saw there was a response to Councillor Wilkins this afternoon as well regarding that area. Similarly to him, my first comments were simply looking at the street in isolation, and I similarly thought about that car park there, which in the past Council had explored making that a paved car park at one stage, which didn't get any traction. The 3 hours seems like a sensible one. However, looking at just Clooney Street for mine is going to knock that issue that they're experiencing on somewhere else in the township. Personally, I would be more in favour of looking at, gee, we've got a lot of quadrangles, haven't we, in the area, given the discussion, but the area south of the riverside of Walkerville Terrace in particular, because otherwise I can just see the parking. And I have to admit, I didn't go out and look at the restrictions, but further along Victoria, down toward the dead end down there, and any other car parking, once again, I'm not certain with the restrictions on Warwick Street. Perhaps you might be able to tell us, Ben, between...
2 hours.
They're 2 hours, yeah. Are they with permits?
Yes.
So there are permits there, but there aren't any down in Clooney?
There will be. 3
There's no restrictions at
Yeah.
Okay. And so further down Victoria, down to that dead end?
They're all limited to time too.
Okay, so that's the only section of that area, riverside of Walkerville Terrace.
And they're getting
doesn't have
roads
restrictions.
right.
Okay, no problem. Sorry if that
Yeah,
wasn't a
no,
report.
no,
I didn't
no.
read it well enough, but I just wasn't certain. But once again, I did think of that car park, and I agree completely that that shouldn't just be for all-day commuters. We're not here to provide that.
Are there any other questions of the report? If not, would you be happy to move it, Councillor Williams?
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Joshi, thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. We now move on to 14.4, subsidiaries, 14.4.1, the East West Draft Budget and Annual Business Plan. This has been presented to audit. I raised no concern. Does anyone have any questions regarding the papers? If not, is someone happy to move? Thank you, Councillor Ashby. May I have a seconder? Councillor Furlan, all those in favour? Carried. Move on to 14.4. This is EHAR. Draft Budget and Annual Business Plan for 2021-2022. Again, it's been to audit. Are there any questions of the draft budget and business plan? If not, would someone be happy to move it? Thank you, Councillor Fern. May I have a seconder? Councillor Ninky. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to Era Water Draft Budget 21-22. Are there any questions regarding the papers? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. Just from reading through the report, I was wondering whether we should, or why we haven't included the Audit Committee's comments into the recommendation. It might be we need to change them slightly because they have concerns, of the 2 dot points there, everyone can see in their agendas, concern with regard to the non-contracted income and so on, and then extreme concern with future viability. Whether or not that we should have that written into the recommendation that administration writes to Era Water to express their concern and so on. I guess more so than anything, I'm for an administration response, given that if the Audit Committee have brought that to Council's attention. I think it's a little remiss of us to not include it, unless there's a good reason to not include it.
Council has said to Era Water that they're not happy.
Through your worship, we did when we reviewed the BR2 and long-term financial plan.
Do we need to do it again? We can.
Well, we have had I'm always reluctant that we generally take on board the informational recommendations that we get from our committees. It doesn't mean we have to, but if we generally do, I think we should. I think it's a good habit to get into. It also illustrates to the Audit Committee that we are looking and listening to what they're recommending and that we agree with what they're recommending. So,
Your Worship, you'll recall at the Audit Committee meeting, and Councillor Phelan will as well, that when their concerns were raised, we did mention to the Audit Committee members that Council has formally written to them and we were able to talk around some of those items, but it was a point of really saying it's important, Audit Committee, for you to make your concerns known to Council, for Council to consider what it needs to consider, but also please be aware that Council has raised this as well. They do have a concern in this space, and they have instructed administration to write to Era Water. So it's really once again reinforcing the level of concern that the Audit Committee has. What's new, I think, in terms of what the Audit Committee is commenting on is the non-contracted income. So that's important, I think, in terms of, Councillor, you're picking up the point about varying the administration's recommendation, is making reference to the non-contracted income, and you may wish to pick up on the future viability elements.
I think both, and if we've expressed that
in the past,
previously, we could even word it so that Council's Audit Committee has recommended to Council that, and then include those two that are right to Era Water expressing their, and then the two dot points.
I just thought that maybe we'd approve the budget and draw the attention to the comments of our Audit Committee, such and such, basically the same as Councillor Williams is saying, but we draw their attention to their findings.
If after councils put decision, because the decision is to endorse it, however highlighting Audit Committee's concerns regarding...
After concerns regarding, all you really need to do is copy the two dot points.
From the report.
Yeah, from the report. But I think
it's
not making good English
decision, and in so doing, highlight the Work Committee's concerns as they relate to if you go to on the report. So one is the non-contracted income through third-party sale of water, and the future second point, future viability of the business. And third one, possibility of further capital contributions from the constituent councils.
I just think our Audit Committee, there was a lot of issues, and we don't have a trail there where we followed their recommendations. I don't think it's
No, quite. Perception. Yes, Councillor
I
Fernandez.
just want to ask a question. What if we don't approve this budget?
Through your worship, if council chooses not to support the budget, it will impinge on the operations of the subsidiary. So the budget has to be adopted by all three constituent councils. The day-to-day business will have to still continue. You can't stop a business from functioning, and we would impinge on that. Those operations.
In the next breath, remember they've got a new
They have a new CEO.
which they have put on, and they're currently interviewing.
They'll be interviewing next week, Your Worship,
New
for
chair.
a new chair.
Because it seems to be the Groundhog Day. And whether they're taking us serious or not.
They are.
I think they are.
Okay.
They are.
The other question I got is, or I raised it at the Audit Committee, they're saying there'll be no capital contribution in this next financial year, but they're going to cut it really fine. I mean, Is it going to be May or June or July?
They have
August?
asked to have a briefing with the CEO,
Yeah.
with the mayors,
Yeah.
end of June, and CEOs, isn't it?
Mm.
You're included,
They're the only two comments. I think we've got a board
Yeah.
committee meeting in June to look at this again.
Mm.
So the audit committee are trying to get their head around this. There's
Absolutely.
2 new members, so I know the council and CEO and the mayor have done a lot of work in trying to get them focused. So kudos to you guys doing that.
Your Worship, given that there is a new general manager, is it general manager?
Acting.
No, the new GM. Oh, he's acting.
He's only acting. He's only acting for 6 months, but he's very, very good.
Okay. I was going to invite him to the audit committee.
I would. He's very, very well versed.
Councillor Nick.
I have to say, for the first time, we're talking about Ollie Wasiala.
Yes, correct, Councillor.
I love this man. He's one of my favourite people in the whole world. So when, no, I'm serious, he's one of the most favourite people in the whole world. So when I heard that he was now, even though it's only 6 months, I think in 6 months, if he can't bring some sort of direction to this, I think that sends a massive sign of what we should be doing. Yeah.
I'm very pleased to hear such positive comments.
Oh,
about
he's a guru.
He was all over it in very short length of
He
time.
loves it too.
Okay, we have this motion here. Councillor Williams, you were the one that you're happy to move it. May I have a seconder then? Councillor Bishop? Do you wish to speak to the motion, or are you happy to let it rest?
No.
Councillor Bishop, let it rest.
Only that I think that we're starting to get some really powerful people leading us, and hopefully it can be turned around.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashbury, I think you
Just
were.
a question in regard to the insurances. Are the pumps and motors insured, or
I
just
hope
buildings?
so.
Yes. Yes, they
I
are.
hope so.
There's a machinery breakdown policy on pumps or not?
They're through your worship. The former general manager did a bit of work in this space, and they reviewed all of the insurances that apply. Yes, they are insured, but there is a excess, and I can't off the top of my head.
I imagine the excesses would be quite high, but they are insured.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, if there are no further comments for or against, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 14.4.4, the Highbury Landfill Authority Draft Budget 2021-22. Audit has reviewed it and referred it to Council for consideration. Are there any questions on the report or the budget? If not, would someone move the... Thank you, Councillor Fernand. Councillor Williams, did you second that?
No,
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Move on to 14.4.5, the EHA Charter Review. Preliminary feedback sought. Does anyone have any questions regarding this recommendation or the papers? If not, would someone be happy to move the motion? Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Niki seconding. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Williams? Councillor Niki, do you wish to speak?
There's only a typo in the in that draft. I think that was the one we're talking about. It's 19.1. We're on the right.
In the attachment, sorry, Councillor, we're on the charter.
We're on 14.4.4.5.
4.4, right.
We haven't got to the confidentials
We
yet.
haven't got to confidential.
That's the hybrid landfill.
No, we're up to
No.
EHA Charter.
EHA
Review.
charter?
The charter, yeah. It's 14.4.5.
Yes.
Yeah. In that draft, the date was wrong. They had to have a date back on over here. It was dated back in the year 14. 2014. Should find it now. I suppose somebody's going to proofread this.
Yes, they will, before we send it in. Yes, I'm sure, won't they? CEO.
Yes, it won't be me, Your Worship, but yes.
Yes, I know.
Mm.
Goes on leave tomorrow, that's why the quick comment.
It comes from the
I
draft.
don't recall 2014 in my paper. Councillor, I will absolutely go
Perhaps we
through
can
that.
leave it in the office secretariat hands to look for the error.
Yes, it's on page 258.
258.
Is that the question?
So, given that we'll look into that, does anyone...
Oh, that's in their document. Oh, sorry, Your Worship, it's not my
because it's their
paper.
draft.
It's
so
their,
correct.
Ah,
their
it's
document.
EHA's document. It's the error. It's not us.
It's about the submission.
I found it. It's on page 20 or page 258. It says the constituent councils for approval by the officer by the 30th of June 2014.
Oh, well done. But that's
So
not
that's
us.
2021.
That was
I read it, but couldn't find
EHA's. That was EHA's.
Yes,
problem.
it's on,
Yes,
it's
so
on
that is an
page
error.
20
That
of
is
the document
yeah.
or page 258.
Okay, well, we've worked that one out. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to identification of items for individual consideration. 16.3.1 Decisions of Council Assessment Panel. 16.3.2
Your Worship, I know it's unusual for administration to call out a report, but do you mind if we do?
No,
As
that
the
was the
words
one I was
report?
going to
Thank you, Your
suggest we
Worship.
do, yes. 16.3.3 Councillor Furlan.
And Williams, Your Worship.
16.
Glasses.
It
Oh,
wasn't
you
you.
did?
I didn't think it was, but yeah. 16.3.4, 16.3.6. Sorry, 16.3. 16.3.4, 16.3.5. My apologies. 16.3.6. And then 16.4.1, 16.4.2. If I've missed you, call out please. 16.4.3, 16.5. Would someone then move that all those reports be received and noted? Councillor Coleman, seconder. Councillor Joshi, all those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now discuss 16.3.2, which has been asked by administration to be discussed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillors, the reason we wanted to pull out this particular report was mainly in relation to capital works, but also the sensational news that the Mayor reported prior to opening tonight's meeting that we received $319,000 state grant funding, which is really, really great news. And what we wanted to do was just remind you all that in December, at your December 2020 council meeting, you resolved how we were to spend that money if we were successful in receiving that money, those monies. And what you resolved was that we would spend it on a toilet, an Exilon toilet at Levi Park, not Hamilton Reserve. So just want to make that clear, that based on the fact that we now will be recipients of the $319,000, the Group Manager Assets and Infrastructure will proceed on the basis of buying another Exiolu for the purposes of installing it at Levi Park.
So the money we use for Hamilton Reserve, the money that we'd allocated to Hamilton Reserve, will be shifted over to pay for the Exiolu since the government has agreed to do the development at Hamilton.
That's exactly right, Your Worship.
So the government's not actually paying for the ex-Levi Park,
No,
they're
they're not.
paying for the work at Hamilton. We're using
That's
that
right.
spare cash to put the ex-Levi
Exactly right.
in at Levi Park.
That's right.
And
Councillor
does
Bishop.
Hamilton get a toilet?
No. Council resolved not to put a toilet in Hamilton because Council resolved at its December meeting, then again at its March meeting, that it would prefer the upgrade toilet at Willow Bend.
Budget bid 2022-2023. Councillor Bishop. Councillor Williams.
I'd like a toilet at Hamilton Reserve.
I can't quite remember if there was a location chosen at Levi, whether it was near the tennis courts or whether it was up backing onto the caravan park so that it had dual use. I just can't remember.
Through Your Worship, as a part of the proposed design that's out for the budget process at the moment, the toilet is included as a part of that design at the caravan park entrance end under the current proposal.
There was some discussion at
And
SPDPC.
then we could use the old toilet later on as a shed, which was Councillor Ashby's comment, if you remember, suggestion.
No, that's at Willow Bend. The one at Willow Bend, we're talking about the one at Levi.
Oh, right,
The
sorry,
old toilet
yes,
was Willow
yeah.
Bend. Yeah, the one at Levi, there was some discussion when we had those preliminary plans at Levi around engaging with the caravan park about the playground as well, to see if they wanted some buy-in to make it a better playground and dual use, and there was also some discussion about the location of the toilet. And thanks for reminding me whether we could get a dual purpose out of that with the caravan park, because that toilet block that's there is quite ageing. It probably provides more than just toilets. I think there as well might be a laundry or something. I can't quite remember.
A camp kitchen.
Camp kitchen. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
This is to help the sporting area and the playground. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's good, thanks, and well done to administration.
It's good, yeah.
Can I ask another question?
You may.
How do we go about the process of looking at a toilet for Hamilton? I'm just seeing it being such an issue with 3-year-old children.
Your Worship, Council spent 2 meetings talking about that
I know
particular
that.
item, and it didn't get
But
support
that was
Council.
dollar driven. It was because
Yeah.
we didn't have the money.
What's budget for next year?
So in the next year's,
Put it in, remember.
12 months from now.
okay.
The designers never had it in there, did they?
Sorry, Councillor?
With the original plans, they never had a toilet in there?
Not the original plans,
No.
but administration brought it to Council's for consideration. And we had, that was the December meeting, then again in the March meeting.
Yeah.
Councillor
Yeah,
Williams.
it's all good.
Thank you, Mayor Fricker. There's also been discussion around whether, if doing Hamilton Reserve, whether you monitor it like we do with a number of other things in the township and see if there is a need for a toilet there before you go spending $250,000 and putting another toilet in. Because if there's one at Willow Bend that people can use with signage and the park isn't overutilised, it may not be an issue. So, yeah.
Through Your Worship, just on that, we've also made provision with the water meter connection to allow for future, if an ex-Levi is to go in, that there's enough water capacity and things like that, and we'll put some provision in for services to be able to get under the path so we don't have to go and dig them back up.
Yep, good idea. So are there any other...
Just one more question. So the wash up of all of this is we're getting a new toilet and it's not we're not having to borrow any extra money?
Correct.
Okay.
Through Your Worship, the other thing that will happen is the path from Mary P. Harris through to join up at the Oban Bridge at Fuller Street will also be done as a part of that money. So that'll be bitumised through there.
Right work.
No other questions? Someone move then that report be accepted. Councillor Fairland, seconded Councillor Ashby. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to, thank you Ben, we now move on to 16.3.3. Councillor Fairland, not Councillor Williams. Councillor Fairland only. You want to ask a question?
It's just a quick question around the outstanding rates as of the end of April. It's about 1.9 million. how do you think they're going to track to the end of June? Where do you think we're going to end up?
Yeah, through your worship, we are on track. We're not seeing any difference between the 2 years. We've received quite a few calls around the payment plans though, as the CEO mentioned. So if they call, we enter into payment plans and that's noted.
So out of that 1.9 that's owing, how much of that do you think is going to either end up in a payment plan, deferred or delinquent?
Through your worship, I can give you figures in the next finance report if you wish.
Remember, that's the fourth quarter that we've only got the invoices, we've only received the invoices for people that pay quarterly.
Just sort of forecasting, given the COVID, given we've got a bit more visibility on it. Just, that's it.
Would you like to move the adoption of the report, please? Thank you. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Joshi. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Thank you.
We now move on to correspondence.
That was a big letter.
So long.
It was a very
I was
big
like,
letter.
it's not ending.
Does,
The comment of the night, that one.
question, Your Worship,
Yes.
does that letter indicate that that's likely something like that will happen at Buckingham Arms?
I don't know if it indicates that it's a possibility.
Yes.
That would be the way of
That's the
high-value
interpretation.
projects.
If there are no further questions, would someone move that the correspondence be received and noted? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. A second to Councillor Ashby. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Are there any urgent? Is there any urgent other business? If not, we now need to move into confidence. Would someone move that we move into? Thank you, Councillor Ashby. A seconder. Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Fernand. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Well, now for the audience. Well, we have moved out of confidence and we now have one further item to discuss. And it also is in confidence, so we now, could someone move that we go into confidence? Thank you, Councillor Furlong, second Councillor Bishop. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. On to the next one.
After this one, yeah.
No, we are up to the next one.
Oh, you've got the volunteers.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry. Forgot about the volunteers. Right, we'll move back in. We're now back. Sorry, folks. We're now back from our in-confidence discussion. We've moved out of confidence now. We have to move back into confidence to discuss our next item. Councillor Ashby has moved it. May I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Joshi. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much. We've just discussed that item, so we've moved out of confidence. We've got one final item to discuss, and that is also in confidence. So would someone please move into confidence? Councillor Joshi. Councillor Furlong has seconded. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. We have moved out of confidence. I now declare the meeting closed at 9:42 p.m. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.